Just before we get into this one, thanks to sponsors of the show, Tiki, and they sponsored the Devon editions. And if you want 10% off from Tiki, use the discount code UKSurfPod, all capitals, and that will get you 10% off from Tiki on anything except surfboards. Hello, and welcome to the UK Surf Show. We are your hosts. I'm Pete.
And I'm Mitch, and on today's episode we speak to Ads, a fellow surf show podcast surfer with a surfing podcast. Is that right?
You don't know what you're saying, do you? Look at your head. That's what it is. Your hair's sticking out the side of your hat. You've just gone all feral. And that's it. That's all I can say. Yeah, Ads is a grumpy surfer. He's been running a podcast probably more or less about as long as we have. And ex-military as well, and BJJ grappling and Jujitsu and loads of stories, loads of good stuff. We'll go straight into it, and then we will come back after, and you'll hear our thoughts.
Here we go.
My name is Ads Lyson. I am the owner of Mahara Jiu-Jitsu in Exmouth. I've also been surfing for 14 years, and I served 22 years in the Royal Marines Commandos as well.
And I believe you also run a surfing podcast.
I do, the Grumpy Surfer podcast. There we go. I didn't want to throw it into another podcast.
When do I put this in?
Yeah.
It's a bit odd actually having someone else on who runs a surf show. It must be odd as well for you because you'd be the one normally asking questions and suddenly it's flip reversed.
It is a little bit, yeah. And I actually really enjoy it. And I don't want to kind of sound like I'm a bit of a fanboy, but I was actually really excited about you guys coming down today. And I was like, yes, they're down.
And then we arrived. And what a letdown. Yeah. That's a shame.
I just want to go home.
Well, tell the people listening and not watching, and if you are listening and not watching, go over to YouTube. You should be watching. Yeah. Tell us where we actually are in this pretty cool location.
Okay, so I started Mahara Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym academy about 3 years ago, and I just recently in the last few months moved into a permanent place in the centre of Exmouth, which is a little seaside town on the south coast, just about 20 minutes from Exeter, in Devon. And it's a really cool place. I managed to get it right on the main road, right in the middle of town. Yeah. But we're also perfectly located for all the local surfing spots as well.
Yeah,
so within an hour and 20 minutes drive from the local places I like to go.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that's BJ, that's what you say you practice at weekends. Is that
BJJ?
No,
BJ.
He's on about something else.
It's not as BJ's you practice.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
So that's what
what is, for people that don't know, what's Brazil? Can't say it. What is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a grappling martial art, and it takes all the elements of judo, wrestling, submission grappling, and combining them all together. It's not a formal martial art, and I don't want to slate other martial arts like karate or judo, where it can be quite formal.
But you're gonna.
but I'm gonna. The way that generally jiu-jitsu is taught in lots of different academies is kind of like in a very informal way. It's made fun, and the thing that's really kind of iconic about it, in my opinion, is the fact that there's no right or wrong way of doing something. Okay. So the way that I teach something here is that I'll teach you a technique, and then it's up to you. Your body size, your body type, the way that you learn is how you put it into practice. So one of the other unique features of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the sparring. So, we call it rolling. And it's just basically once you've been taught in a class some techniques, you then just put it into a live situation straight away. So you just, roll her out on the floor.
Oh, cool.
So, do you know what MMA or the UFC is?
Yeah.
Take the punching and the kicking out of that. That's what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is.
Right, okay. I like the idea you said you learn it and you go put it into practice. You literally push people out the front door onto the high street and just get your grapple on.
When I first started doing this, one of my good friends who used to be, I think, like a semi-professional surfer, he owns his own gym up in North Devon called Yama Jiu-Jitsu, Ben Ruth. And he said when you open your own place, one of the things you got to be careful with, or what you're probably going to expect, is random people coming off the street and saying, right, who's the hardest bloke in here?
Right. Has that actually happened, is it?
No.
Oh, right, okay.
Probably one, because I can be quite, I think I could be quite intimidating sometimes. You know, being ex-forces and stuff like that, you kind of hold a little bit of a presence.
Yeah.
Plus, I also think that we're not in America, and British people are a little bit more reserved, so they're not going to just go through the door and give it Billy Big Licks, especially when there's, 20, 25 other men, women on the mat trying to strangle and choke each other. So yeah, it's a bit weird.
I mean, Pete did say when we popped up and we came in and we put all the camera gear down and you kindly went down and got us a little pastries, Pete was like, he's just left the door unlocked, all our camera gear's there. And then we had a whole conversation about, I mean, you're a bit of an idiot walking in there trying to steal something.
There's nothing to steal.
Well, yeah.
Try and rip one of these out. You'll be there all week trying to get it up. I was going to say, you're saying about holding a presence being ex-military. I was just wondering what happened to you.
Well, he was in the army and he's a jock, so
he's got.
I tell you what, he's a good fella though, aren't you?
I like his hair.
Yeah,
I'm growing it out. That's why I've got these weird tufts at the side, like Terry Wogan. I think I'd try something different.
I noticed both of you the same. Actually, both of you used to be very clean shaven and clean looking, and now the beards are coming on.
Do you know what? Since we left the forces at the same time, didn't we? I thought thereabouts. It wasn't far apart.
Yeah, like 22 May 2020.
Like obviously for anybody, not Navy and RAF, but anybody else. Like, you just want to have a beard. That's just the thing. You do anything to have a beard. And suddenly I leave, and that's now a thing. I don't know if it is in the Marines, but in the Army, you can now have a beard. Like,
no,
I kind of want to get back in just to have a beard.
I think you can in the Marines. The Navy, you could already.
You could, yeah.
But I got told a weird statistic the other day, is that in the Corps, you could have a moustache. In the Navy, you could have a beard, but not a moustache.
Right, okay.
I thought that was a bit strange. Like, why could you have, like, a little rat underneath your nose, but then you could have a massive beard when you're in the Navy?
You also know now that as well, because you can have a beard, that's like, I'd rather not have one because everyone's got it. So it'd be like that. Well, everyone's got one. I'm just going to shave.
Well, the only reason why I grew mine is I gave myself, I think, 3 months to kind of grow it. And I'd been on surf trips before where I just not shaved. And I just looked like a tramp. Like it just looked like an afro, but on my chin, like a wiry afro.
Yeah.
And then it started to come into, started to grow in a little bit. And my wife was saying to me, you're not keeping that. You need to shave it off. And then when I've actually got it and I've said, it's really irritating me, I might shave it off. She's like, nah, keep it.
Like,
See, the thing is, when I grow a beard, I look like a Turkish waiter. Literally, I got a photo. I'll show you it later, and I look like a Turkish waiter.
I was amazed how much, and we've gone into the beard podcast, but how much water like a beard can retain, like after a shower or out of a surf. I'm like, what? It's like 3 hours later, it's still dripping wet. What's going on?
I don't know. I think that's a Scottish thing. My beard
It's definitely a Scottish thing.
Retains all of it.
Yeah, you had yesterday, didn't you? Someone saying to you about haggis or something. It's like he actually brought some with him this time.
Yeah, but I did bring him some haggis.
That's
he likes
good.
all the Scottish foods.
So, when did you start surfing then? When did that start?
I was 14, so it must have been sort of like the early 90s. I was on holiday in Wales. My mum and dad were quite into like sailing and water sports, right. And we were up round Tenby. Okay. And I just remember going down to the beach one day, and there was a couple of guys in the water, surfing, and I thought, that's pretty cool. So I went to a surf shop, and there was a second-hand board there for like 50 quid. Stereotypical Slater 90s board, 18 inches wide by, a centimetre thin, yeah.
It's like an HB pencil.
Yeah. Something I was never ever going to ride, but I bought that, and it pretty much, grew from there, which is weird because originally I'm from the Midlands, so from South Birmingham, a little town called Redditch, and all my friends were like super into like the main sort of sports, football, rugby. They all supported the local football teams and stuff like that. And I wasn't really interested. I had like Callie Slater on my pencil case and Rob Machado like stickers and stuff like that. And I read like Surfer magazine from W.H. Smith's and stuff like that. So I was a little bit kind of outside of the bubble of the social norm that you could really say. And then when I started to drive, I used to drive down to the coast in Wales, and just sleep in the back of my car, and that's pretty much where it all started from, really.
And did you pick it up quite quick?
Do you know what? No. The answer's
I thought it was going to be really quickly.
Yeah,
I was doing like air reverse in the first week.
Well, do you know what? It depends on how you kind of put that together.
Yeah.
So I could stand up okay, but like doing like the technical side of things, I didn't really develop properly until maybe about like 10 years ago.
Right.
Because when I started surfing, there was no kind of technique.
Yeah.
It was like you just did it by doing it. And because I didn't have a peer group to surf with, it was just like me surfing on my own. You know, I spoke earlier about going to Bali and stuff. I spent about 5 or 6 years just traveling on my own. I went to Indonesia and different places, just took my board and a backpack and off I went. So I never really had anyone to bounce off like you know the local guys do. So, and that's where you kind of learn, I think, the technical side of things is you see other people doing it and then you practice that, where I kind of didn't really have that. Yeah. And it was a funny thing. So obviously, you know, we arranged this for you guys to come down. I remember I was on holiday once in America when I was a kid, and the only time I remember how I remember this is that it was when the Back to the Future ride came to Universal Studios. It was brand new, so we were talking like mid-90s, and I bought a magazine. I can't remember what it was called. It was like Surfer magazine, but it was like a massive, weird shaped one, and in there they had like little diagrams of how to do certain maneuvers.
Right. Okay.
And the one that was in this was getting a barrel ride, so inside a barrel, but then you let your weight go and you do like a 360 with the lip and then land back down. I was like, I've never even seen anyone do that, like ever. Even to this day, I've never seen it.
That'd be pretty epic to see that.
But that was pretty much like all the technique stuff that I picked up, really.
Did you try it?
No, I couldn't even get into a barrel, let alone that. Funny story, actually. Like we used to go on holiday to Mid Wales. My mum and dad sailing. A part of like a little sailing club on this little lake, and used to go to Lake Bala every year. And a friend of the family, their son was the same age as me, and we're talking about surfing one day, and he goes, "Yeah, man, I get in the green room," and I was like, "You don't even surf, mate. Like, what are you talking about?"
Yeah, I'd tell you what. The only time I went with a mate, and we were down in Bude, and someone took a picture of us from the shore, and I'd got a full-on head tuck barrel, and he thought it was him because he was like, "I got barreled as a picture." And I looked in and I was like, "That's me, mate." And so I've never let him live it down, and it was the shittest of shit barrels, but it's just so happened someone took a picture at the right moment, so it looks perfect. I'm like, it's all that counts. It's all that matters.
Barrel riding's getting out. Not that I've ever had a barrel, but it's just about getting out, right? Getting deep and getting out. I prefer the idea of it's not you coming out the barrel. Actually, you ride the other way and you ride into the barrel, and you go in with as much speed as possible, and it's just seeing how far down the line you can get where you pop out. So it's riding into the eye of the storm. That's a much cooler idea. As fast as you can.
Put that into practice going up over then. You'd more than likely get that.
There's a video of Kelly though. He was it was about 2-3 years ago in it might have been a final somewhere, and he was barrel riding, and he wiped out of nowhere, completely separated from his board. And then there's a video from another angle, like a bit deeper, and you see him find the board while he's getting tumbled round, pulls the board back under his feet, gets back to his feet.
It's just
and they didn't get any score. It got like a 0.5 because it was an incomplete.
It was Chopo or Fiji, I think.
It was nuts.
Yeah.
Only Kelly. And so when you were a kid, was it round here you were surfing, did you say?
Primarily North Devon.
Okay.
We did quite a few holidays down to North Devon, like the Croyd area and stuff. So it's pretty much kind of where I grew up surfing, and I ended up meeting Glenn, who owns Surfed Out up in North Devon, so opposite the tiki shop you guys went to the other day. And he's an ex-para or former para. I don't know how they say that, but yeah, he is former para, and I met him around about 1998. And he I just used to get gear off him.
Yeah,
Used
right.
to go in the shop. Really friendly guy. You go in there and talk about anything. And every time we went down there, I made it kind of like my my little key thing to do is just to go in there and have a chat with Glenn. And yeah, it just turned out that I got drafted up to North Devon. Quite a bit, sort of like the formative years of in my military career, and became quite good friends with him. But yeah, going back to your question, North Devon was the place that I primarily surfed as a kid, and when I joined the Marines, I got drafted to Scotland for the first sort of 5 years, and I was
You're all right now, though.
Hey,
You're all right now, though.
I'm all right now. That's how I understand Jockanese, as I call it.
That's what he always says to me. You can't say anything about Scotland. You're racist.
Well, I was based on the East Coast and the West Coast, so just north of Glasgow and just north of Edinburgh and what's the West Coast?
You're at Arbroath.
West, yeah. So I was at Arbroath, and I was also in Faslane.
Yeah, Faslane, right? Okay.
Yeah, up there as well. So got used to those accents, but I was actually really good because I never actually took any surfboards there.
So you never surfed at Arbroath?
No, there was quite a contingent of people that surfed up there, and I never really did. I was quite into, because it was earlier on when I passed out of training. I was quite into drinking and socialising with the guys I was serving with.
Was that like around 2000 time?
2001 through till 2000 and late 2003.
I think we joined at the same time then, 2001.
Yeah, so I joined up May 2000 is when I joined up.
Yeah.
I was going to say that. Is that near the redemption spot over that side?
No.
Is it not?
No, so it's not, no.
I know you do it. Anytime I mention it, you think I'm going to say it. Like I can remember there's some Scottish
so
name you told me.
Remembering that. It's fine.
Yeah.
But that's them spots aren't really on Surfline, so I probably won't mention them too much. But round Arbroath way, there is some good spots, some really good spots actually, especially when you go a bit further north from there. Plenty of places to surf.
I've got a few mates that live up around like the Aberdeen way, and they're all sending me like fots every now and again, kind of. Yeah. This is where we've been, and I've got another mate that goes to Thurso quite a lot, so he surfs a lot of the reefs along the north coast.
Yeah.
And a few other guys, that I've known locally, they go up to not the Isle of Skye,
Tyree or Hebrides.
Hebrides.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they surf around there quite a lot.
Yeah.
And it's always something that I've wanted to do is go back there. But now, because I'm self-employed and doing that sort of thing, it's quite difficult to say, do you know what? I'm just going to go off for a couple of weeks, and plus tying it in with like the swell periods, and I don't know the spots either. It's kind of like throwing a bit of sand into a frying pan. Really.
Yeah.
Well, I think so far surf trips that we've done with the podcast, Scotland, we had to travel about 3 hours to get a surf, didn't we?
Yeah.
We had one in the northeast when it was one day, but that was like shore dumpy. That was like shore dumpy heavy, as in like pinned me to the floor and made me involuntarily do the worm on the seabed. And Wales was all right, wasn't it? Wales, we had really good.
Most days,
most days in Wales.
Even this week, we've only had one.
We've had one surf.
We've got one, and it's not looking good till the weekend again.
Sadly. So yeah, my point was being that it's so difficult because we arrange these like weeks, and we're like, we'll go that week. Because one, it works out a good distance apart, and we can get a lot of people in, and there's more chances of being surf. And out of Newquay was crap as well, wasn't it? Cornwall, we had like one day that was decent surf as well there.
Nah, I don't remember that.
So it was. I think out of all of it, we've had 1 week. So out of 5 or 6 trips, whatever it is, we've had 1 week where we've actually had decent surf most days.
In our head, we're going to surf every day, and the idea is that we always want to surf with the guests, because it's something. If you've had a surf first. It's not like a case like here we've just turned up and we don't know each other. We've obviously spoken over the years, but there's just something nice about having had that thing together. That's obviously the thing that ties us together and the reason why we do this.
Logistically, it never works.
It just never works, no.
I think the problem with us as well is it's not like we're not, say, like Australia or America, somewhere like that. The consistency of swell within this country, because of our location and all that sort of thing, and being an island, and the wind direction, the predominant wind direction is pretty much onshore all the time. So, even if you go on a surf trip as well, there's 9 times out of 10. A lot of the time, you're probably only going to get 2 or 3 days where it's going to be decent.
Yeah.
I mean, I went on the surf trip to Fuerteventura like years ago, and it was rubbish the whole time.
Yeah.
And people were saying, oh, you know, go to this spot, it's going to be brilliant. But it was just howling on shore. Bearing in mind, Fuerteventura is kind of like the windy island anyway, up in Canary Islands, I hope it is.
Yeah. They do the windsurfing championships there, don't they?
That's right, like windsurfing and kite surfing. But the time we went was when the swells were sort of different. So it was kind of around about September, October time.
Yeah.
And the only day, you know, you talking about just pulling into closing out barrels, the last day that we were there, and we found like this nice little cove, like right off this cliff, because we used to drive around and just find random places. Didn't know what they were called or anything. Just see that they were working all right, figured out how to get down there, and then down we went and went surfing. And it was probably about 3 foot. It wasn't very big. And the swell was coming in. There was like a big round sandbar in the middle of like this cove.
Right.
And it was just petering up. It was probably about shin deep in water. And it was like a takeoff. And then we were just playing a game of who can tuck in and make it through this really shit little weak like barrel and come out the other side, and that was pretty much it. But that kind of made the trip like
it's one good fun, isn't it? Like I know we only got one surf yesterday, we were saying, but it was fun one as well.
Super fun, yeah.
And we were like having a laugh, and I'm still impressed that I was on a fish for the first time in ever, and because I'm like predominantly longboard, and I was in Tiki, and I was like, let's have you got something like a bigger fish with like a lot of like buoyancy? He's like, try this. The thing was like a surf skate. It was like, way, here we go, like that.
To be fair, before we went out, I was like trying to politely nudge Pete towards taking his log, and I was like, you're just not going to catch any waves on that thing. You're going to have a horrible time. You have to walk all the way back up the hill at Putts and go get your log out. And he was on wave. It took me ages to catch a wave on the thing I was on. He was straight on waves. Like, fair play.
It's good fun, but I was going with that is I've seen some of your videos and pictures of you surfing. Like you can properly surf, not like our level. Like like with this podcast, I've always said like I'm pretty below average surfer. I just enjoy doing it, enjoy talking about it. But I've seen you like you're proper good surfing.
That's nice of you to say. It's taken me a long time to get there, and we were talking about earlier how were you good straight away?
Yeah,
I think it's very much like jiu-jitsu, and this is why jiu-jitsu and surfing is really relatable. Kelly Slater does jiu-jitsu or did. You've got a load of other guys, surfers that practice in this, because it's very, very similar in the way that the technical aspect and the skill acquisition for surfing is you're either on a really slow level of getting better, or the learning curve is super steep. And it's only really, probably the last 10 years that I've actually really enjoyed surfing. It used to be a really frustrating thing for me. When I got drafted down to Plymouth, I went to a surf shop there called Surfing Life, and I bought a 7.6 mini mal.
Yeah,
and it went great, but I used to get frustrated in like paddling into things, and I think this is why guys get really good when they surf locally, is because they're in the water all the time and they understand how the ocean works and where to sit and how a surfboard works, and and you're surfing with your peers as well, and you're playing off with each other with like, I'm going to do this turn and you do it a little bit better than your mate. And that's how like airs came about, right? It's people trying to outdo each other. So my surfing has taken a long time to kind of get to the point now where I'm actually comfortable surfing in different types of conditions. And now I've got to the point where, and this is where I properly lean into the grumpy surfer kind of thing, is I don't like surfing beaches anymore. One, because the crowds are like mental, especially when it gets good. Yeah. Like Croyd on a good day now is like, it's not impossible to surf, but I call it, there's loads of FOD everywhere. Floating people that some people know what they're doing and other people kind of don't know what they're doing. They don't get out of the way. Yeah. So I try and surf a lot of kind of like the more secret spots, inverted commas, or the reefs around this local area now, where you only get the competent people that are in there.
Yeah.
But when it's good, it's really good. And because I feel like the levels there, for me personally, I can enjoy it a little bit more.
Right, okay.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm never going to be, a pro surfer that's, smashing the fins out the back of a wave. But I can do a sort of semi-decent cut back. I can flow with the wave and finish it off and kick back out and paddle back to the peak and be in there and stand up with the good guys, that I like to say. So, it's nice of you to say. Thanks.
I was going to say what I took from the first part of that, where you said jiu-jitsu and surfing's very similar. I was like, because you get rolled around on the floor a lot? Because that's what happens to me.
It's interesting that you recognise that in yourself, that you didn't really enjoy it for that long, and now you do, and you understand why. Because I think most people aren't trying to be a pro. The probably numbers that are trying to be pros are so small, and everybody's after something different out of it. And I think even at any level, that's probably the same. Everybody's after something different. So, but it's quite hard to know, I think, what you want from it. Like, do you just want to surf as well as you can, or do you try to surf as well as they can? There's quite a lot, like in the mindset of what surfing's given a person. And some people surf just to get something out of it for their mindset, as opposed to, that I just enjoyed that I smashed a ton. And that ton doesn't have to be that good to anyone else, as long as it's good to you and your own ability. Like, ultimately, the battle's just with ourselves when we're in the surf, I think.
I think the worst thing that you can probably do to yourself is have somebody video you, or
it's brutal.
Or like take photos. I remember when I was in the Navy surf team, we used to do like the Navy trips and stuff. People would be taking pictures, or when you did finally get a video of yourself and you thought, oh yeah, he's caught me doing this turn, or he's caught me on this wave, and you look back at it and go, oh my God, that was shit.
I've done nothing.
I look like a right idiot. I've got that poo stance. I haven't done anything that I thought I did.
Yeah.
It's always devastating seeing yourself surf.
What you said to me? Why did you say, like, when I come off, you're like, you come off like a dead man surfing. Like, there's like GoPro video, and when I come off, I just like literally pencil and just go bump up the side of the board.
Let's talk about Grumpy Surfer podcast. How did that come about? What got you into that?
Well, I was driving from home to North Devon when I was based there, and a lot of the travelling I used to do, back then, I used to listen to a lot of surfing podcasts, and I just thought one day, do you know what? I could do that. But the Grumpy Surfer podcast is not just specifically aimed at surfing.
Yeah.
It's not niched, which is probably where like it falls down a little bit, but I don't really care.
Yeah.
It focuses on surfing. I like talking about it. Hence, the reason why you guys are here, right?
Yeah.
The reason why you do it. You enjoy talking about it. Grappling. I've talked to a lot of high-level world champion jiu-jitsu guys and wrestlers, and also I've got enough friends from the military, similar to yourself, where they've got some really good heroic stories that they're never going to write a book. They're never going to be a film about them. Their story is literally going to die with them. So I just thought it was a really good platform to get people, normal people, just to sit down and have a chat with them and tell their story.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just kind of like quite a unique way to do it. And plus, when they look back at it and their kids get older or whatever, or people didn't really know that about them, it just gives them kind of like a non-confrontational
for sure
way of telling
that's quite nice. And how have you found setting up? Have you found it challenging, or
the first, when I first started doing it, it was epic because I knew nothing about social media or advertising. I knew nothing about editing. I literally had my Mac and I bought a couple of USB microphones, which is pretty much what I've got. Which I've got now. I've just got better ones, and I just YouTubed the shit out of stuff,
right?
And just muddled my way through it. I had no experience whatsoever in doing anything like that. I just thought, fuck it, I'm going to do it, and here I am now. Like nearly 4 or 5 years later, still doing it, still enjoying it. And except now I've got the experience of like the editing, you know, like
Yeah.
guys. I've got the editing, I've got the video and also the audio as well that I can play with, and it doesn't take me anywhere near as long, so I can fit it into, you know, my everyday life. So being self-employed, I'm having to advertise 2 businesses and the podcast as well, which has got its own, you know, challenges in that itself.
And I guess that does work really well. The flow, because obviously your life revolves around literally what it is you're going to come on and talk about. Obviously, not that you surf that much, but that's not by choice. But if we never had that opportunity, it would be a hard thing to talk about.
I think it's that thing, like you were just saying, like once you become self-employed, it's very difficult to go, well, yeah, there's surf on today, but actually I've got work I've got to do, and if I'm not pulling it,
I'm
no
going to
one
stop
else
you there,
is.
Pete, because that's wrong for me anyway.
There you go. See, wrong mindset.
But you like, so if you have class booked in, and you go, right, there's surf today, are you going to just cancel your class, or are you going to?
So this is the way I've managed my life, Pete.
Right, go for it. Tell me the secret.
This is the way I've managed it.
Organised.
So I'm very lucky, and no doubt Mitch is, that we have a pension, right?
Yeah.
We have a pension. We worked 22 years in the military, and I've got a full pension. I'm 43 now, so for 3 years I've had a full pension. So I work I work a 16-hour week. So the way that I wanted to do was I wanted to still be able to surf when I wanted to, but also earn some money. And I was like, well, how on earth am I going to do that? I didn't want to be one of these people that join the rat race, if you want to use a stereotypical term. I didn't want to do a 9-to-5 job. I didn't want to leave and earn as much as when I left. So I just took the chance and started a holistic therapy business, which, you know, I do once or twice a week, and I do jiu-jitsu classes 6 days a week in the evenings at the moment. And luckily enough, I've been successful in doing that, you know, through promoting it, through learning through the podcast about advertising and all that kind of thing, which kind of helped and helped me along as I'm going along. And now I'm able to earn enough money to be able to go, do you know what, the swell's actually quite good today. My daughter goes to the school 2 miles away. My son goes to a school from in Lympstone Village, which is literally like a 2-minute walk from my house. So door and back, it takes me 5 minutes to take him to school. So if I want to, I'd just say to my wife, as long as it's all right with her, wink, wink, you know, can I go for a Dorney today? Now, if I go for a Dorney, I mean, I know it's quite late at the moment, but if I go for a Dorney, it's a 6-hour round trip. But if I go like at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm still home by 10, 11 o'clock, which means I can still do other things through the day and pick them up from school and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I've worked it.
The key in there, Pete, that you missed is being organised. That's your problem. Time management.
I can tell you both minute. I didn't realise I was sitting with a couple of pensioners actually.
The most active pensioners you've ever come across as well.
Yeah. No, I know it's just difficult. Like as I say, I'm not in the position to have a pension and work a 16-hour week. But
made your choice.
Yeah, made my choice, didn't I? But no, with work and 16-hour week, I do 16-hour days sometimes.
I was going to say you're doing we're both on probably very similar pension. Somehow I'm still doing 65-hour weeks.
Yeah, but I think you do more than that with the amount your phone's been going off this week as well.
I do spend most of that in the surf though, so it's not terrible.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it is difficult to get surfing all the time as much as I'd like to. And then, like I say, other things like we down at Putts yesterday, and it was like, I said to Mitch, imagine like driving like 2 hours down here and this is what you're faced with. And he's like, yeah, I can see why you're like reluctant unless you know it's going to be, you know, spot on. And to be honest, this year hasn't, apart from the last like, let's say month, this year hasn't been the best for swell, has it? I don't think. I think there's been some down on this south coast, but
it's not been great. I think I've surfed 3 times since September. Like I say, I only kind of go when Surfline has turned into magic lieweed, hasn't it? It's now
I think
Surfline.
I think Surfline's worse than
That's
Magic
odd.
Liveweed was.
I think locations matters here because I've actually found Surfline, apart from wind, to be really good for swell. It's really accurate for me.
So I use 3 or 4 different apps to kind of predict where I go, because a lot of the places that I go, I mentioned, I don't really like surfing the beaches. So the reefs that I go and surf, they're very tide dependent, very wind dependent.
Yeah.
And also they have to the swell has to be a certain size for it to work.
So you're going off the old style 3 system thing to do. I don't know how much I want to say of like the old style of how you used to measure waves before those things were. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I'll go off the Wave Boys, which Surfline is quite good for, but you can get the Wave Boys from anything else. I also use Wind Guru. And I use another app as well. They're like a weather
weather ones,
because, like you say, the Surfline has been a little bit, finicky, let's say, with wind. But it also lies quite a lot as well. It also says it's going to be really good when actually it's going to be rubbish. But it also says it's going to be rubbish when it's actually going to be really good.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing for surfers and a bad thing for surfers, depending on how far you're travelling.
That's the thing I've had over the last year. Been looking at that. And it's been exactly what you just said, where I've looked at it and gone, I'm not travelling down for that. And then seen people's photos and like, what the fuck? Like, I could have gone. Or when it is like the other way around, it's going to be really good. And I thought, should I go down? It says it's going to be good. And then seeing people going, well, this didn't happen, did it again? So it's chucked another. No, it's just chucked another spanner into the already.
That was the thing. If you were a Magic Seaweed user, if that was your go-to, I think that for me, even though Magic Seaweed took its data from Surfline, the problem with then having to be forced to Surfline is that whilst you might know Magic Seaweed was wrong here, there and the other, you know the nuances of that being wrong. So you know when that says 2 to 3 foot for that spot, you know what it actually means, what that translates to. So still having to go through that process of learning again. But I mean, windy is what I use for my wind. Windy seems to be pretty spot on, but also gives you swell directions. And I like that it has the wind as arrows. It blows arrows. So like you don't.
So you actually know.
You don't have to know your cardinals. It just shows you. A visual person. Yeah, they've got a pop-up version. I was going to bring it back to something you were talking about before, just about kind of leaving the military and you're set up and you're able to work a 16-hour week when you want to. And we kind of spoke about. We were going to do an episode because there's obviously 2 sides to every story, so I'm going to give it my side just on a high level, but I got absolutely shafted in the way I left the military because I was medically discharged, but after my 22-year point, having had Crohn's for 10 years and played it down just because I guess that's the army I grew up in. You didn't really show that sort of thing, you just got on with it. So I'd be the one person in a med centre trying to blag my way onto exercise, which was fucking madness. When I look back now, I'm like, why was I bothering doing that? So then after 10 years the army were like, you can't have Crohn's and be in the army. I'm like, I've been away and done fucking LFTT, I know that means nothing to anyone else, in SEER courses just to make a point, survival courses, just to make a point of being like, I don't need my handheld sort of thing. So then to just out of nowhere, and I got 2 days notice, I de-kitted 2 days after getting medically discharged, which was pretty mad. But so I guess I left a little bit bitter, but a lot of people would say that, so we're going to do a whole episode about that because at the time I couldn't really speak about it when it was going on because I was obviously still in, and I was going to do a whole episode just about that process and how I got shafted and how much people probably don't really realise how much you give to be in the forces, like all these missed events with your kids, your family, weekends being taken off you as you're leaving the gates of your barracks on a Friday, deployments. I went to Kenya with a day's notice for 6 weeks, again, all this stuff you lose. And it becomes normal, but it's definitely not normal. So we were going to do an episode talking about that and how I've landed on my feet, and I guess you have as well. But I didn't want it to come across like, there's loads out there if you just look. But certainly my whole upbringing in the army was there's nothing in Civvy Street. You'll struggle. Stay in the army as long as you can because you're just never going to do anything. And actually to have left, especially in the way I left, because my timelines were put off a little bit, and you said that you weren't looking to try and match your wage and stuff like that. I was trying to match my wage plus because I knew for the right thing I would happily start a career again. Whilst it was nice to know I've got a pension and stuff in the bank, but to actually land on that, like, right, okay, what do I want to do? I want a job in surfing. I didn't want to use, you get resettlement in the army, you can go do a load of courses when you leave, and your last 2 years and across the forces, and I was like, I'd never wanted to put myself in a position where I need that to get a job, whereas so many people I've known that have left the forces and they're sort of there with 2 or 3 weeks left before they leave, and they're like, well, shit, I've not done anything, I'll go do a forklift course. Not to say there's anything wrong with that, but I didn't want to put myself in that position. So to end up in, for me, a dream job and a dream location in surfing on my doorstep is genuinely, I don't know how I've landed there, and probably the same for yourself. Sort of like, I don't know how. It's not as bad as people say, and like I couldn't be happier that I'm out. Like, I miss the blokes, I miss the bants, but outside of that, I don't miss the fuckery, I don't miss all the shit that goes with it. Sevy Street's weird. There's just a bit of non-discipline to it.
It's normal to me.
It's normal to you, but there is stuff there if you want it, but you have to build up to stuff, I think, and it sounds like maybe that's what you've done. You've been led down a path without perhaps realising it.
Not really. I mean, there's a lot of similarities with what you're saying, but for me, I've always, throughout the whole of my military career, I've managed it well. Mm-hmm. Now, I class myself as quite an average person, right? But in reality, I think I downplay myself quite a lot. I think I do actually have quite a high standard for a lot of things, hence the reason why I've been able to build something like this from an idea from nothing. When I left the military, about 2 years before I left, I went to the schoolies, so the guys that help you with your transition and doing all those courses kind of things, and I said, look, I'm leaving, what do I have available? And they said, well, it's too soon to be doing this. Come a year out. I was like, I don't want to leave it a year. And I was very similar. I sat down and I wrote a few things down, like what I wanted to do, and it was a blank bit of paper. All I wanted to do was be a surfer, be in the surfing industry, and that was pretty much it. Well, in my head, there was only a certain few lines of ways that you could go. Be a professional surfer, was too old for that, and I'm certainly nowhere near good enough to be a professional surfer. Go into the clothing industry, know nothing about any of that sort of thing either, and coaching, I fucking hated it. I'd been a surf instructor, level 1, level 2, for 20 years, and I was like, I'm not slagging anybody else that is a surfing instructor, don't get me wrong, but going down to the beach and teaching somebody the ABCs of popping up, and there were different levels of people, people on holiday, all that sort of thing. Let's just say some people were not as fit as others, and trying to be positively reinforcing them in the sea, getting their money's worth because they paid to stand up on holiday to go surfing. Mm-hmm. It used to break me doing the same thing day in, day out. So, and then my mum turned around to me and said, look, she's been a holistic therapist for 25 years. Yeah. I said, look, why don't you try the Bowen technique? And I was like, okay. So I did the first couple of modules of that, found something in it. There was benefits in what I was doing.
So, what is the Bowen technique? The Bowen
technique is a non-invasive therapy that releases muscle tissue using the fascia. The fascia is the connective tissue within the body. So if you've ever seen a dissection where the skin's been taken off a body, you see the stringy bits? Yeah. That's the body's fascia. It doesn't just go over the surface of the skin. It goes through the muscle tissue, through your internal organs. Everything's connected in your body, believe it or not, from your feet all the way up to your head. So by doing certain small non-invasive techniques and procedures being like ankle, knee, hips, you can tell if Ted said this 1,000 times. Right? Yeah. It can create change within the body, release the muscle tension, which then allows the body to start filling the areas that have got that tension back up with blood, clear everything out, and the body can start to heal itself. In a nutshell, that's kind of how it works. So I started doing that, and then about a year before I left, I started my own practice. And then the year that I left, so January 2022, I sat down with a friend of mine who is who's just opened his own actual MMA gym up in Manchester, and he said, "Why don't you teach jiu-jitsu?" He's like, "You're really good at it. You've been doing it for years anyway." Being a PTI in the Marines as well.
Yeah.
It was just something that was second nature, and you've been taught it all anyway. So I was like, that's not a bad idea. And I was like, right, okay, I need to find a location. Found the location opposite my house. Again, a minute walk, which is next to a preschool opposite my house. And made a logo through the podcast and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, all the creative juices that flow with all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
I created a logo and created Mahara Jiu-Jitsu, and the Devon Bowen Clinic did that as well. And I didn't expect to do it.
Yeah.
But what I didn't want to do, going back to kind of what you were just talking about, is I didn't want to be the guys that didn't have anything, didn't know what they wanted to do. The majority of people, when they leave, you tell me if I'm wrong or not, but they go into risk assessing or project managing.
Yeah, it's true, yeah.
Absolutely dog shit, unless you like that sort of thing. But they go into it because they don't know what they want to do, and it's a free course, and you could say it's kind of like a stepping stone for something.
It's kind of an obvious progression. Certainly, if you've been a senior across all the services, you've managed troops, you've managed people, you've managed qualifications, careers, all that sort of stuff. And then you've probably got some qualifications within there as well, so you're used to management. So, in short, what you do as a senior NCO is project manage. It could be an exercise, could be a range, it could be anything, could be deployment, could be anything. So it kind of makes sense, but there's clearly some gaps you need to plug in courses and qualifications to get there. But it kind of, I think, project management has become probably the sort of 2005 boom in all ex-squaddies trying to become private security abroad, and at first there's so much money in it, but suddenly every man and his dogs try to do the same thing. So suddenly there's no money in it, because even though you might be qualled and experienced to the eyeballs, like, well, what are you different to that other guy here? And I think project management's becoming the same. It's like an obvious bridge for people, but it's probably not as easy to get into. It's like, if I've got mates doing it now and then they're changing their sort of mind last minute as they're literally leaving the door of the military. And I remember a guy, he was my battery sergeant major just before a couple of years before I left. And this is the problem, like, you end up so loyal to the forces, even though the day you're gone, you're forgotten about it. They don't give a fuck about you the day you're gone. They don't give a fuck about you when you're there, let alone when you're gone. But he was supposed to be on resettlement doing courses, and instead of doing that, he was still on exercise weeks when he should have dekitted. He shouldn't even have a military kit, let alone being on exercise. He was like, "No, I just need to make sure the blokes are okay on exercise." I'm like, "You're fucked it." And that's the army, that's the military, has give you that mindset to not look after yourself, to think about everyone else first. And I think that's a problem. That's a huge problem. But people will find what they find in Civvy Street, won't they?
I wish you'd done that with me. Thought about me first rather than look after yourself.
I always look after you. I always look at, I put your dinner in the microwave last night in the oven.
But something you said back then, actually, about you teaching surfing and stuff like that, and getting your qualifications. I think that is it's got to be one of the worst jobs you could do in surfing. Not if you love doing it, that's great. But to me personally, to go to do something like, I love surfing, what can I be around surfing all the time? Teach people surfing, and you're in the water and you can see perfect waves, and you're not allowed to go because you've got people to look after. That was like torture, that would be to me.
That's an interesting one. I haven't been a surf instructor as long as you have, but and without jumping in, which I'm doing. I think you you separate that professional element, though. Like, obviously you'll be professional and you coach people, but you're absolutely right. Like, for the people that do it day in, day out, and you're just watching like what you want to be doing, but then by the time you can go for a surf, you're too fucked. Because it's actually, I mean, it's a tiring thing. Like, you just did resistance training. When I first started doing it,
the guys that I was coaching with, some of them would just fuck off and leave their groups. I mean, you're talking like the early 2000s now. And they used to take their group out, they'd teach them like arching the back, catching the white water. I don't know why I'm doing that. Catching the white water, and then they'd just bugger off on the foamy and go and have a surf, and then they'd come back. But you can't get away with that these days. The health and safety side of things, looking after people, the insurances and stuff that come behind that, you can't really do stuff like that. I want to come back to 2 points really that you were talking about earlier. Then we'll move on to the
That's
thing.
right. Yeah, you go.
Pension side of things. I mentioned earlier that you downplay things within the military, like the pension. And I say, like, I'm lucky enough to have a pension. I did 4 tours of Afghanistan.
Yeah, there's no luck about it.
I say I'm lucky enough, but I earned it.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think a lot of military people don't see it like that. I'm 40 years old and I've got a full pension, but I got blown up 23 times. I got shot at nearly every single day on 2 tours. And there was times that I'd written a death letter to my wife and my family, giving me goosebumps now, and put it underneath my bed if anything had happened and stuff, which it actually did. And I never found that death letter again. I think my mate got rid of it when he packed my kit up, but you earn that, and I don't think that gets portrayed enough.
No, not at all.
And if you are lucky enough to do a full career and actually do something that you actually join up to do, which was fucking amazing, by the way, as well as like being quite horrific. But it's like, I grew up watching Arnold Schwarzenegger and Commando and stuff like that. Yeah. I was watching Apocalypse Now, watching...
Get on the chopper now!
Pete was watching Dirty Dancing.
Watching what's his name? Getting mortared while he was surfing the point.
Yeah.
Apocalypse Now, is that?
Yeah, which is amazing.
Charlie don't surf.
Yeah, exactly, that one. And so to kind of say it and put a dampener on it a little bit is a bit strange for people, I think.
Sorry, Ads, do you mind talking about a bit about like military stuff of like you said, like you just skimmed over then like it's fucking normal. Yeah, I got blown up, I got shot at, like, and like between you two a conversation like that, and I think everyone else out there would have just gone, say what now? Like, do you mind like going into that a little bit?
What do you want to know?
Like, what the hell? Any of it? Like, what the hell happened with getting blown up? First of all.
Okay, so I'll do the short bit and then I'll go into the story of the first time I got blown up. So
I love that it's the first time.
We went back for more.
I was quite lucky in the fact that I would call like the golden era of kind of the war fighting in the last sort of like 20 odd years. Yeah. So I joined up the Marines in 2000 and I passed out in 2001, and then I ended up going up to 4-5 Commando in 2002, but I was just in the process of getting drafted to a commando fighting unit. So there's 3 fighting commando units in the Royal Marine Commandos. There's 4-2 Commando, 4-5 Commando and 40 Commando. 4-2's in Plymouth, 40's in Taunton, and 4-5 is in Scotland. So Arbroath, up that way, up by Dundee. And just before I got drafted there was when the Twin Towers happened. So I was sat in my mate's living room. We were watching Blade, and his mum rang him up and said, "Turn the news on." So we turned it on, and saw the second plane flying to the Twin Towers. I turned around to my mate, and I goes, "Oh fuck, I know where I'm going." 6 months later, I was up the Hindu Kush in Afghanistan looking for the Taliban. So that kind of started the golden era of like the Middle East, really. So I did an operation called Upchakana, which was the initial Operation Enduring Freedom, the Americans called it, which is going up the Hindu Kush or in Afghanistan looking for the Taliban, looking for Osama bin Laden. Did that for 7 months, came back 6 months later, the invasion of Iraq, so did that, working in the northern desert, Al Jazeera Desert, just north of Baghdad. Some crazy ass stuff happened there, which you haven't got a podcast that's long enough to tell them stories. Came back from that, and then I got drafted down to 4-2 Commando and did 3 years where nothing really kind of happened that much. And then we went out and did Operation Herrick 5, which is in Helmand Province. And it was just like, it was like a Western. Every time you went out, you were getting shot at. Anyway, every single day we were in the contact and the firefight. I was working in the mobile operation group, so J Company, or they used to call it J Commando, And the mobile operation groups used to go out into the desert and then used to go and find the enemy. We used to call it recce by fire, which is where you go to an area where you knew the enemy were or the Taliban were. You'd drive up to the edge of the area, you'd sit there for a little bit, and you just wait to get shot at, neutralise the area, kill everybody that's there that's shooting at you, and then fuck off back into the desert and then come back. A little bit like the SAS did like in the Second World War, but not to that massive extent. Anyway, 2 weeks before the end of my tour, we did an operation called Up Silver, which was a multitasked operation where you had the Danish, the Americans, so you had the 82nd Airborne, I believe it was, ironically, from the Second World War, and the Estonians. And the idea was it was a combined operation to go into Sangin. Sangin, DC, was like the hottest place, district centre. Was the hottest place in Afghanistan. It was like the Taliban stronghold, and the idea was to go in, surround it, and then just take out the Taliban as you went through. Loads of leaflets got dropped by helicopter and plane into the local area, so the locals could escape and not get caught up in the firefights and the fighting. Anyway, one of my jobs was to, before we went in to do all the fighting, was to recce the routes for the rest of the battle group to come. So we had 4-2 Commando plus its hats and debts, so like the artillery and all the engineers and everybody else was behind us. And our job was to find the route all the way up to come up to the line of departure, of which then you went forward on H hour to go and assault Sangin. About 2k outside of Sangin, we were going up past this little ridge called Crocodile Ridge, which looked like a crocodile's back. And I went off to find an alternative route because it'd been raining quite a lot, so a lot of the big heavy vehicles were getting stuck. And I went down this little dip that had a bit of shale along the middle and was going to go and pop up the other side. And my vehicle went down it, and as I went over the shale, the vehicle went over an anti-tank mine and blew it up. It took the front part of the... so imagine if you're sat in a Land Rover, you've got the driver. I was the passenger, so I was the commander. So the commander sits in the front passenger seat. And then I had a gunner, which had a... I don't know why I'm pointing above my head. But above your head here, you've got like a 50 cal machine gun, which my gunner had. I've got a general purpose machine gun in front of me and my personal rifle, and the driver's got like a mini-me, which is like a smaller version of a machine gun. And the vehicle went over this anti-tank mine, blew the front wheel off and the front part of the engine block out. So everything on the bonnet just went up into the air. I got thrown out of the vehicle because it blew up on my front side. So the front came up and launched me out. We didn't have seat belts. It was just an open top vehicle. And I ended up landing like a cat on the floor. And luckily, I was all right. I dislocated my wrist. I had blast injuries to my ears and my eyes because of the, an anti-tank mine is what it says on the tin. It's designed to blow up a tank, and I was in a Land Rover that we basically buckshee put stuff on to make it a little bit more bulletproof. It wasn't. Yeah. It just had like stuff masking taped and bunged to it because we didn't have the kit. And we got blown up, and we're in the bottom of this ditch, and I see the convoy just kind of marching across the top. And then someone came onto the radio, so onto the net, and said, "Is everybody all right?" And then one of the other lads answered my call sign. So each vehicle or each section has a call sign. Mine was 25 Charlie. And someone answered my call sign and said, "Yeah, I was all right," when I wasn't. I was in the bottom. So one of the things that you get taught when you get blown up or there's a mine incident is not to leave the vicinity of the area. You have to get your bayonet out and start prodding the ground to see if there's any more any more mines if you're in a minefield. Well, I did think about that, and I just fucking ran all the way up to the convoy and said, "Look, we've just been blown up down there." And anyway, the lads came down, secured the area. And eventually the adrenaline wore off, and I just broke down. I was crying, and luckily for us, I had 3 people in my vehicle, and they were all okay. Yeah. It all kind of swallowed me up, and I broke down a little bit, and they put a sling on me and stuff, and the helo came in and casually evacuated me out to Kandahar, which was kind of like the main staging base then for all forces in Afghanistan. But unfortunately, during that operation, quite a few other British people died, commandos died, and I was on the same plane with them flying back home. So I didn't get the end to the tour that I wanted. And I ended up going back with some people that were injured, which was pretty savage. Which in a way, kind of, everything ties back to surfing and stuff, right? And leaving the military is where, I think it ties in, is that surfing and now jiu-jitsu for the last 10.5 years of my life has always been like an anchor for me. It's like I was never that stereotypical person that joined the military and when they finish being on the ranges or finish work, they go back and they're looking at weapons books and memorizing weapon systems and different vehicles and stuff. I finish work, I'd go back, I'd get my skateboard and I'd be skating around the car parks, pretending that I'm doing some tail slides and stuff like that, or I'm watching the latest VHS or DVD that's just come out in my room. So it was always kind of like my escape and what I call my anchor, which I think if I didn't have that and all the things I've experienced, I mean, that's just one story. I got a million like that. Being in firefights and stuff like that if I didn't have those anchors, I think I'd be a little bit more, I'd have a lot more mental issues than I do. Well, I don't have any mental issues at the moment, I don't think, apart from just being mental anyway. But, those are my anchors. Yeah. And those are the things that keep me sane and keep me looking forward to something, I think.
So it's interesting that you obviously had surfing beforehand, but maybe, I don't know, maybe you did, maybe you didn't have that connection to what you've just said about, if you didn't have surfing. Mine, I guess, I've spoken about it in the show before, no need to go into it, but similar sort of thing. But I started surfing as I came back from a second Afghan, which was hugely kinetic and, fun and horrendous all at the same time. But so for me, they came hand in hand. Almost. It was the same time I got diagnosed with Crohn's, which ultimately led to me, leaving the army. So it was weird that it all happened really close together. So surfing was, from the off, it was that sort of life reset, default, whatever you want to call it. So it was kind of like that whole, the Lord giveth and taketh at the same time. I think definitely without surfing, I would be a fucking shell of a man. I've got no question about it. So for the people who, I think we speak about it a lot as well, some people just go surfing to enjoy surfing, and I don't ever go surfing to reset my mental health. Let's be clear on that, because there's never a case of, well, I've been in the water, why am I not feeling better? Every session is different, but I know what it will give me. And for some people, they don't really recognise in other people that surfing's more than just a sport or a lifestyle thing. It's so much deeper for some people, and I think we probably connect on that same level for that thing. And I'll be fucked without it.
I think both of you actually, not having any experience of military, per se.
Well, he lived at St Morgan for a week, so he's got some experience.
Oh yeah, well that's the experience. Those god awful beds that I ended up pulling the mattress off and throwing it on the floor and sleeping on the floor in the end because it was so uncomfortable. But both of you, the way that both of you talk about similar experiences, like being blown up, standing on an IED, but skim over it like it's the most normal fucking thing in the world, and it's like, from an outside point of view, that makes me think what the hell do they feed you or tell you, or how you learn to deal with that, or is it a simple case of you just fucking got to get on with it and that's it?
Well, there's an element of that, and I definitely can't speak on your behalf, Ads, but there's also an element of, I know what I've been through, but I also know that I'm still here with 2 legs and 2 arms, so I feel like I've got nothing to complain about. I've got my own experience, and I came home and I'm able to enjoy surfing, so I sort of see that, what the fuck have you got to moan about?
The things that you don't see is that it's normal for us. Any person that's been involved in Afghanistan, Iraq, or has been down some deep dark roads with firefights and stuff, and I've got a lot of friends that are in the special forces, and they say those early Herrick tours, they're some of the worst firefights that even they've been in. And these are guys that have gone from being in the infantry, in the Marines, in the paras, and they've joined special forces. The difference between special forces and normal conventional forces, I would say, that aren't SF, are that they've got all the ats and debts, they've got all the money behind them. You've got GCHQ, you've got, all the all of like the iStar assets. So like the I don't know why I have my hands up here. They've got the drones.
Yeah.
And the Overwatch stuff, whereas like when you're on the ground, you only get that when something happens.
Yeah.
So the reason why we talk about it like we do, and any other person really does, is that's been in those situations, is because it becomes a normal thing. Like you walking down to the shop to get a paper in the morning, or taking your dog for a walk, going out and patrol for 6 to 7 months, and every single day you get shot at, or someone's trying to kill you, or throw a grenade at you, or trying to pull the wool over your eyes, or trying to sneak into your base, or whatever it is. It just becomes a normal everyday occurrence, which is probably why, and again I'm going back to the anchor thing, is why when people leave the military is that they struggle quite a lot, is because their whole identity is the military. Yeah. When they leave the military, their identity is still there, but they don't have that anymore because they're not doing it.
Yeah.
So surfing, jiu-jitsu, I don't know, painting or knitting, if you want to call it that too.
That's what you do.
Yeah,
that's
you like a bit of knitting.
I love a bit of knitting. Yeah. Banging Della Soul socks.
Trying to be different.
Yeah. Them and Della Soul socks, they're banging.
So when we talk about this stuff, and there's a lot of surf action charities out there, and climbing or whatever it is that gets people out to do things, is giving you the opportunity and exposing you to be able to give you something to look forward to.
Yeah.
So when you're not surfing, what are you looking at?
Porn.
So when you're
Porn.
not
mostly mine's like skating and yeah.
But also, you're looking at forecasts, right? So you're still invested in surfing.
Yeah.
You're looking at the forecast every day. What's it doing? What's Pipe doing today? Surfline, right? You subscribed up to that. You look at it in the evening and you see Pumping Pipe. You go, oh, what does that look like? Oh, yeah. So what does next week or the 2 weeks' time look like for the forecast? You can start prepping yourself for it. Yeah. So, but what are you doing? You're giving yourself something to focus on. So when people don't have that, and their identity is linked to the military or whatever job it is, it could be like you could be a professional rugby player. You spent your whole adult life up to that point with people around you. You've got all the camaraderie. You could be in business, working for Amazon for 30 years, and all of a sudden, you get a retirement, you get pushed out the door, and you're like, oh shit, I haven't got anything.
Yeah.
And that's when like your mental state starts to spiral, is because there is nothing there to kind of hook you, to anchor you, to kind of keep you looking forward to doing something. I mean, you could arguably say that family and all that sort of like gets you through it, but I don't go surfing with my missus. I don't do jiu-jitsu with my kids. I'd like to. They don't want to do anything with their dad.
Do you do jiu-jitsu with your missus, hey?
No.
You got 2 kids, you've been rolling around on the floor a bit together.
My missus still thinks she's going to bang me out anyway, so I'll let her have that. But it's one of those things, is that you kind of take it for granted when
of course. It's that exposure therapy thing, I guess, in a nutshell. If you surf huge waves every day, it just becomes normal, and suddenly it's not that big a deal, because that's just what you surf. You need it to be bigger. But also in our world, we're always aware that there's somebody that's done it bigger, or they've had it worse, and it's not that bad. Like, maybe to just give one last example to sum it up, like you said you've done Iraq as well. I've done early Iraqs, Telic 5 and 6. Like, remember first being deployed, just super young, and like, you'd get mortared all the time in Basra, just like from the city, they just fucking fly.
They said mortared, not mortared.
Murdered. They'd fly mortars straight into you all the time. They just point and shoot, right? And at first you're like, fuck, body armour on, get under your camp cot as if that's going to protect you, and your mozzie net. That was the thing, right? That was the drill. But like a couple of weeks in, like, mortar alarm goes off and you're just like, turn the TV up. It just becomes so normal because there's a point it's not even a case of you accept it. You just move on. It's like, well, if it's going to get me, it's going to get me. There's literally, if I'm going to go for a shite at 3 o'clock in the morning and get hit by a mortar, that was going to happen. There's me now not going for a shit. That's changing my daily routine. Like, you just have to accept it. Yeah, that's how it is. But
when I came back from my last Herrick tour I did was Herrick 12, which was in 2010.
Yeah, I was on 12. Yeah.
I was really lucky enough that I came back and I went straight out on a Maldives trip, a boat trip out to the Maldives, which was epic, like super good. And I came back and it just came out, said, "Oh, we're doing a sports camp, but this time it's going to be on a boat trip. Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah,
damn right,
yeah, I'm going." So we ended up going out for 12 days on a boat trip to the Maldives and going from Mali to some of the northern atolls and stuff, which was awesome. Which I was a little bit, jealous, because some of the lads have just gone out on another boat trip to Indo. Oh. And I'll show you some pictures afterwards. They were like, when they got there, it was like 15 to 20 foot barrels. And because it's a really long trip when you go out to Indo. It takes like 2 days to get there. You've got to fly out to Kuala Lumpur. Then Kuala Lumpur, you've got to go to Java. And Java, you get a coach to wherever the port is. And then from the port, you've got to sail out to the islands and stuff. And they said on the boat trip out, it said the swell was so big that even the Navy guys were like proper spewing over the side, like seasickness. It was horrific.
That's not for me.
And, they said they got there, the swell was like 10 to 15 foot, like massive. And then through the week, it kind of tethered off, and they were surfing some really nice waves, like solid waves.
Right. Okay.
Like, that's when your surfing comes on. Then
nice.
It's like when you've got some good waves like that.
I think I'm a long way off.
I think that also brings us into one of the questions we do ask sometimes, which is you're saying about like surfing trips and stuff. Best wave, your best wave you can remember, or best wave you've surfed, if you can say it.
You don't have to say where it is.
Do you mean my favourite spot?
No, favourite.
What's your best memory of your best wave you've ever caught? Do you think you know what that is?
It's difficult. I've had so many. No, on a really good swell about 5 years ago, a prominent North Coast point break, so you could call it. I surfed it through three different peaks, which would probably be about 1.5 to 2 minutes worth of being on the wave. My legs were caving after it.
Yeah.
But it was really big, and I caught it from right on the top of the car park, which, funny old thing, is the name of one of the peaks. And surfed it all the way through to the inside. Nothing crazy. Yeah. Just, from the top down to the bottom, trimming on the top, staying high, get your speed when it's just tethering in front of you, dropping back down and coming up. It was just really, really nice. And but it's also one of my favourite spots to surf as well.
So we know where that is from previous
discussions. We know where that is.
and then your worst wipeout.
Oh, that's a story in itself. You probably drove past it. You heard the point?
This is the one in Croyd where you went, oh, it looks nice over there.
Right, yeah.
Epic.
But not nice.
Epic, but savage.
Yeah.
Because when it gets big, you've seen the rip come out from Saunton.
Yeah.
Comes out along the rocks at Saunton, and then from the point, it sort of like angles out and comes out in front of Croyd. I don't know why I'm like pointing, but it goes like that.
Yeah.
It goes like that. And Anyway, it was one morning. I took my mid-length out, my 7.4 Tiki.
Nice.
Got from Tiki.
Nice.
Can't remember what it's called now. It was an older board. And when I was the PTI at Chivner, so I'd got up nice and early, and I thought I'll go down, and the swell looks big enough for it. So I went down, parked up, nobody there, nobody in the water, Dorney again, because I like my Dornies. And got my board, walked down, and I go through a keyhole now, which is there if you know where it is. It's where it is, but I didn't go through the keyhole. Then I went through like the fingers in the rocks.
Right.
Walked down through the rocks and started to paddle out. Now I can generally tell how big it is by how strong the current's pulling.
Right.
And I started to paddle out to the peak, and it took me about 30 minutes to get there. I must have done. I was quite paddle fit then as well, and it took me a while to get there. Now everyone's got their line up like spots. Where you have to line up.
Markers.
Line yourself up on the markers on the shore so you don't drift, because if you go too deep you get absolutely spanked and washed onto the rocks, and that's what happened. So because you've got no marker of like how big it is when there's no one there, if you've ever gone out and surfed on your own, especially at places like beaches or point reefs, is that you can never really tell where it breaks until you get there, and then you can kind of like see where the white water's triangling and go and find your point. So I paddled out, I got to the peak and was like, I was absolutely hanging out when I got there because it took me so long to get there. First set comes and I was like, well, I'm going to go for it. Paddled for it, didn't get it. So I'd come in a little bit, and the big thing in my head was, don't get caught inside. So I thought, fuck it. Next wave came, and I was too deep. Like the rip had pulled me deep because I paddled in. I took off. It went too fast. I couldn't go down the line with it. So I jumped off, wiped out, but the white water washed me into the fingers. You see the fingers of the rocks down there? Washed me into the fingers. And when I came up, I was like, fuck, I've got to get out of here super quick. And I went to put my feet down, and I was literally like knee deep in water, like it'd washed me that shallow. Shit, yeah. And I was like right up in, and the rocks were probably like as high as the ceiling right here. I was like, fuck, I've got to get out of here. So I turned around, grabbed my board and turned around. And when I turned around, there was about 10 foot of white water coming back in. And I was looking at it, I was like, fuck. So I just threw my board. And for the next 2 or 3 minutes, as the set came in, I just kept, and bearing in mind I was in knee-deep water, I just kept getting washed over and over like this. And I couldn't put my feet down to come up for a breath. And it got to the point where I was like, there's no one there to see me in the sea because I was on my own. I was like, so no one's going to come and get me. If I don't get out of here soon, I'm going to fucking drown. So luckily, the last wave that came in, the last bit of white water came in, it washed me up onto the finger of the rocks. And when it washed me up, I just went, and I just pinched myself to the rocks, and I scrambled my way up. And I got to the top. I was like, oh my God, like I nearly fucking drowned there. But I think I was more gutted because I had a brand new 5'4" hooded wetsuit that I'd got from Tiki because my mate worked there at the time, Stu Pointer. I'd ripped all the arse cheeks out of it. I don't know how that happened. I think that's just a military thing, right? Yeah. My gloves were fucked and my board had a big hole in it and stuff like that. And I was like, oh man, I'm never doing that again. And I've surfed, without sounding super big-headed, I'd surfed all over the world to that point, from Indonesia, Australia, Europe.
Isn't it funny that like all these things of like you surfed all these places, nearly got blown up, and all the things that happened to you, and it's nearly fucking a beach in Devon that nearly
your
kills
home spot almost.
Yeah, it's super weird, and that was like my worst ever wipe I ever had. Yeah.
Don't go surfing alone, kids, if you're listening.
I think perfect person.
Yeah, right. So we added these 2 questions, and so we're just
doing the one. I'm not doing the other one.
I'm not doing the other one. Right? Okay, we added 1 question, and as I was saying, right. So let's assume In fact, we're both 6 foot tall. Let's go with that, right?
Okay.
Me and you, yeah, we're both 6 foot tall. Easy to imagine for everyone else. I've just done a bottom turn on a wave, right? But I've got terrible technique, so my knees are fully locked out. I'm stood fully tall, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just in the bottom turn. Bottom of the board is at the bottom of the wave.
Mhm.
Yep. Very bottom of the wave.
Yep.
My head is in line with the top of the wave. I'm 6 foot tall. Bottom of the board's in line with the bottom of the wave. My head is in line with the top of the wave.
Mhm.
I'm 6 foot tall. In feet, how big is that wave?
I'd say about 4 foot.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's diplomatic, I think. We add this in.
We have this because of people's sizes on waves and what they presume to be. Most standard answer is 3 foot. And you're like, it's not 3 foot though, is it?
We
But
can't
like, so
agree in
Well, if you're-
surfing
well,
worldwide.
So here's the thing. This is how I would work it out, and
'Kay.
this is how my brain works.
Okay.
Okay. So if you're at the bottom of the wave and
Mhm.
you're 6 foot tall and you're learning into it, so you've got at least 2 inches worth of foam underneath your feet, right?
Right.
So you're not 6 foot tall. You're like what, 5'10"? It's 14.
12 or 14, I can't remember. It's
12.
12.
Yeah.
So you're 5'12", all right?
6 foot.
You're not stood vertically up like that. You're leading in towards the wave because you're doing the bottom turn. So you're going to lose at least another.
No, but in this instance, I am stood fully tall. There's
Well,
no
shit bottom
leaning.
turn to
Oh,
start
and
with.
I've got a shit bottom turn, but I make it work.
I would probably say like it's going to be like 4 or 5 foot because. Why am I saying because? Because surfers exaggerate a lot of the time, but I like to be quite accurate with my.
That's
my
it.
sizing.
That's the point, though. That's for me. That's the point. Why are we putting these stupid and pointless metrics into a system that is a metric? So 3 foot should just be 3 foot, right?
It should be, yeah.
Like that. How big's that board there?
This is 7 foot.
But imagine when somebody said how big's that board. If you applied surfing metrics to it, you'd say that's a 5 foot board. It makes no sense. So there's no need to play it down. There's no need to play it up. I just find it really frustrating. Hence why we always go to knee, chest, head high.
Yeah, I think the best is that everyone can agree on that. So far, which everyone said, is going. Oh, it's waist high, it's chest high, because you know what that is. Then roughly, chest high is probably around 5 foot sort of mark.
When you talk about wave heights, it's very much like fishing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So like the fish you actually caught was like this big, but actually when you tell everybody how big it is, it's like this big.
Yeah, that's it.
Because I used to say that the other example of this was, when your mates always like, they got on a scrap at the weekend and whatever, and especially when it's civvies, they're like, oh, goodness, I was in the pub at the weekend, right, this guy nudged me, turn round, he's the fucking biggest marine in there. Like, so if you apply surfing metrics to that story, like, this guy nudged this fucking guy, this marine, right, he was the smallest guy in the room. That's what surfing metrics do.
Hey.
He was the smallest guy in there.
I was always told that's 6 inches.
Well, and it still is.
All right.
Well, that's probably the best answer to that question we've had so far, probably because it just ties in line to my thought process as well.
Why lie?
But as it's been an absolute pleasure to finally have you on, and if anyone wants to find you, where can they find you online and in person?
So I've got about 1 million different things that I do, but Mahara Jiu-Jitsu, you can find Instagram and Facebook, TikTok as well.
Nice.
I sound like a really old dad, don't I? Toctic. The Devon Bone Clinic for the bone therapy and sports massage. My wife just started a cognitive behavioural therapy business, so she's doing that as well. The Grumpy Surfer podcast, which you can find on all podcasting platforms.
You've had some pretty major people on there as well, haven't you? You've had... what's his? I'm trying to think of him. No, American guy.
Kelly Slater.
No, what's his
Devon
head?
Howard.
Him as well. But
Devon Howard on?
I've had Devon
Legend.
Howard. I've had Tom.
John.
John Wayne Freeman.
That's it.
Yeah.
John Wayne.
Yeah.
John Wayne. Are you John Wayne?
Yeah. No.
Yeah. No, do you know what? When I first started the podcast, I started putting feelers out to lots of different people, and randomly I said to. So Tom Carroll was one of my poster boys by Kelly Slater when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I just sent a message out to Tom Carroll and I said, all right, Tom, my name's Ads. I just started this podcast, former military, blah, blah, blah. would you be interested in coming on the podcast with me? And he said yes. And I was like, it's Tom Carroll.
What do I do now?
Yeah, so I best get my admin in order here and make sure everything works. So a bit of to and fro and some cancellations and stuff, and yeah, ended up doing a podcast with him.
Nice.
I did one with Luke Egan as well. Did one with Brad Gerlach, Devon Howard, Ben Skinner.
Yeah.
And who else have I done? Yeah, I've been talking to what's the guy called Barton Lynch.
Oh, BL, what a legend!
Yeah, so I've been talking to Barton Lynch inadvertently on and off, like through socials and stuff like that. And I did ask him to come on maybe the beginning of the year, but never really got round to it because of doing other things, i.e. this.
He's somebody you can talk about facial hair with. I mean, he's literally let himself go properly.
It's like out here, isn't it?
It's like a wild raccoon.
It's like, what's the crystal meth Santa?
Yeah, I was going to say it looks like a homeless Santa. Yeah, so just asking people and doing stuff like that was pretty cool. And I think that, again, going back to talking about surfing and jiu-jitsu, why they're very kind of unique is the fact that in no other sport could you be out in a lineup and you be surfing with your idols.
Totally.
Jiu-jitsu is exactly the same. You could go to a club or you have a seminar with somebody and they come and you end up rolling with your idols. I mean, I went to 2019. I went to New York to Madison Square Garden for a long weekend to watch a UFC fight between Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal. And I went to what's his name now? I went to one of the greatest gyms there. Not Hickson. What's his name? I can't remember his name. That's really going to annoy me now. Anyway, I went to this jiu-jitsu gym and there was just so many world-class people there.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'd say some names here and you wouldn't even know who they are, but like from a grappling point of view, there was like the gods of jiu-jitsu were there.
So if you took it to surfing, it'd be like going in and like Slater, Taylor Knox,
so like say there's
Lopez,
there's like 5 or 10 different championship tour surfers, all in one place, just training together, and you can train with them, and it was great. I had a couple of rolls with some UFC fighters. I had a couple of chats with them and stuff because I had the Raw Marines like rash guard on and stuff to say, and having a little chat with them and stuff like that, and it was just really cool, and that's kind of like the unique thing, and again, another one of those comparison things between surfing and jiu-jitsu. Why it's quite unique is, you could be sat up in Pottsboro, and Kelly Slater or Tom Curran could be sat there with you. You could be down in Cornwall and Ben Skinner's on his cherry picker sat next to you, spinning some stories and stuff like that, and talking about his son and that. It's pretty cool. Like
That's really cool. Of all the guests you've had on, which one is the shittest? I'm not looking.
I've got a feeling you would have answered that as well.
I wasn't kidding. Would you actually answer that?
One of the most difficult ones. No, I can't.
I knew it.
I'll tell you afterwards.
All right, okay.
Even if I say what it was from or what they did, if you go back and look at the past episodes, you would tell who it is.
Move on. That's cool. Yeah,
amazing.
Well, thanks for coming on, and wish you all the best with this place, and looks like it's going to do well.
Hopefully, your 16 hours turn into 15 hours soon.
Yeah, I just decided that I just can't be asked to do a class. Maybe one day can I do 15 hours?
Take a leaf out of this book, Peter.
That's it.
Oh, there we go. Thanks, Ads.
That's legends. Thanks.
Well, cheers for that, Ads. It's been long overdue getting him on the show. And do you know what? I didn't know what to expect. I've spoken to Ads, through Instagram and whatever over the years. And genuinely, that was a really, really nice conversation. A lot in common, especially you actually, Pete. I know you like your BJs as well. You like to give, but
you're such an infant child, aren't you? Honestly, like you said that in the interview as well, and it went down like a lead balloon. Then it's just gone down just as bad as me.
That's
and
a
I'm
terrible
normally the
expression.
childish one the childish one that is like, you know, it's just like. I'm the one that always thinks of the stupid things and the innuendos and everything like that. Didn't even cross my mind. And I'm skipping past it so you can't say my terrible expression.
No,
but ads was
something.
brilliant.
No. We'll come back to ads in a second because this always winds me up. Expressions people use and they're backwards and people don't realise. When you say, "Oh, that went down like a lead balloon," you mean it didn't go down very well. A lead balloon would go down really well. So that expression makes no sense. Does it?
Do you know what else makes no sense? Your hair. That makes no sense.
That's
Move
very
along.
true. That's why I've got a hat on. But yeah, no. It was genuinely a pleasure to have Ads on the show. Hosting us in his gym and his dojo and his sensei. I don't know.
Did you? You literally got no clue about any of it, have you? I like you tried to do. The best part about that was when you got that. You went, "Oh, I've always wanted to try and do one of these like flip roll things," and nearly dislocated your whole body when you first got there.
100%. You're just trying to. You're saying that from trying to remember what happened, when clearly that's not the first ever time doing that. So, I mean, I landed it, and because I've already done my edit. Which will come as a surprise to people listening because they're listening or watching. But to you, knowing that this is more than a week in advance of when this will be out, or a week in advance, I have done the edit and that bit is overlaid. So everyone will have enjoyed my full-on James Bond, a roly-poly.
And they would have also not realised that when you got up afterwards, that your neck and back made a noise where it sounded like they just separated from each other.
Well, I'm not arguing with that.
But ever since that, your pop-up's been brilliant. I'll tell you what, that was great, and the stories, like even like I said, because both of you did the same thing, and I said it in there, where it's like you both got stories of like him actually getting blown up and you pretending you nearly got blown up just by standing on an IED or whatever, you know, your half-ass version of that. But you both just skim over it like it's fuck all, and it's mind-blowing to me, because if that had happened to me, like it would be that thing of, you know, like, how do you know when you meet a vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you. It'd be like that. How do you know when you meet someone who's been blown up? Don't worry, I'll fucking tell you. Because that'd be, hi, I'm Pete and I got blown up once. That would be my story, because that's the only thing that's interesting about me, really.
And just to get Pete back for saying I'm childish, for all our vegan listeners, I take no part of what Pete has to say there. But I could put your point into another reference about how, because you've said it before, how that, you know, I've said something like that, or you've been around other squaddy mates that have said something and you're like, what the fuck? And it's been like so normal to us.
Yeah.
I've just spent a day painting my bedroom, which I hate. I hate painting. For me, that's a big deal because I've been out and painted something. I hate doing it. But you do that as a living. So you're just like, yeah, whatever. Like you probably didn't even hear it. You're just like immediately moving on. So, it might not be the same in context, but the principle is exactly the same. You're so sort of numb or acclimatized to that thing, that situation. It's just normal.
Yeah. No, I do get what you mean. It's but I think to just normal like civilian people, like you two, just sort of skimmed over it like quite like it was just a normal conversation, and it was just madness. But I get what you're saying. You know, everyone's their own thing. I mean, you know, you talk to a doctor who's just like cut someone open or reset their arm, they'd probably say it like it's just the most normal thing. Whereas if it was you or me talking about it, it'd be like, you what? You know?
So there you go.
Yeah.
So there you go.
But that was good. And his gym's really nice. And I mean, Ads was really, I don't know what I was expecting. I've spoken to him like loads of times before, like when he was first starting up his podcast and everything, we had loads of communication. And I don't know. I think he's one of those people that when I've spoken to, and then I've spoken to in real life, I find him much more entertaining in real life, but I get that a lot on text. I think it might be me, because my text with people is just not very good. I think it's just, I think I'm coming. The more I go through it, the more I'm coming to the conclusion is actually my text communication is really shit, and a lot of my mates have told me that I'm really blunt in texts and stuff that. That's
true.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that your mates have told you that, but I can tell you that as an acquaintance.
Oh, you're such a dick.
But you know something I did like Ad said as well, he was talking about how, you know, for him being he was Marines, but he was like the only one that surfed, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he wasn't in his barracks in the mess in the block at night time like some people just reading up on weapon systems and bits of Russian kit and all that stuff you're kind of expected to do. He was there just trying to get surfing, go for a surf. Everything was about surfing, and he was kind of the black sheep amongst that because no one else was doing it, which is, I guess, I kind of felt the same when I was surfing it, I guess, for the last 12 years when I was in the army, like, because there was only one bloke that surfed in my regiment, and he, even though he was from Saltburn and told me he surfed for a long time, he nearly got us both drowned.
I was going to say, is that the one that told you Saltburn was full of rocks?
Well, no.
He was trying to keep you off it.
He was the one that got pulled out on a rip, and he was going to ditch his board.
Right.
So I paddled out to get him, to bring him back in. I hadn't long surfed, so I had no idea what I was doing. I paddled out quite a long way. If anyone knows Saltburn, on a bigger day, it's quite far, the break. But I paddled all the way out. When I got back, because I came back to the beach, I was knackered, and I turned round, and I was like, where the fuck is he? And I saw him. Oh, mate, he was so far out. And I was on a shortboard. So I paddled out, not knowing what I was supposed to do. Paddled out, there's no one about. Paddle out, and he's like, I'm going to ditch my board. And I was like, don't ditch your fucking board. Like, I'd surfed long enough to know that was a terrible idea. You don't have to surf to know that's a terrible idea either, right? And I just realised that he was still getting pulled out in this mad rip. And he was so panicky. I was like, forget, we'll get, the rip will dissipate. I was like, look, get off your board and just hold on to it. I was just trying to calm him down. Just sit, sort of get your hands on top of it, just to try and give him something to think about. And we've done that, right? And I managed to get him to paddle in a little bit. Like, we were so far out, like, the waves weren't, even though they were massive, they weren't enough, like, They weren't formed enough, to push you in. So I was like, just keep paddling in. So he was on a longboard. So I'm pushing him in bursts. And he's in now. He's probably in, like, 50 metres on the inside of me. And I'm, like, knackered. And I'm trying to paddle back in. And I see him take off, like, on a wave, because I said to him, try and catch the next bit of white water, and that'll bring you in, right? Obviously, it makes sense. And I turn round and look, and he's on this bit of white water. That was it. So he comes past me, right? I was on the inside. He's on the white water, comes bombing past me, just prone on his belly, and I'm like, oh, thank God for that, like, huge relief. Now I'm just trying to worry about me getting in. So I sort of look away and just concentrate on paddling in, and I look in front again, and it looks like from behind he's trying to get to his feet. He's trying to surf the fucking wave. And he stands up and falls straight off, and the whole thing just starts again. And I'm honestly, I was fucking stewing. Like, I was raging. I've not told this story very well because I'm feeling rough as fuck. But when I got out, his missus was on the beach, and all I wanted to do was throat grip him. Like, I literally wanted to bite his Adam's apple out. And, man, so that night...
Throat grip him.
I was raging. So I remember that night, I messaged him because I knew he'd be a bit distraught about it. I messaged him, mate, like, these things happen, you should know better. Like, you're supposed to be an experienced surfer. You should know better. Like, that was mad that you wanted to ditch your board. And he's like, I'm genuinely, like, I'm really embarrassed. He says, I know better than that, but I'm so embarrassed by that. So at least, like, no harm, no foul. At least nobody knows about it. So the next morning, we're on Reggie PT, like regimental PT, physical training. So, like, the whole regiment's in there, and all my mates and that, they know I've surfed. They know I'd been surfing last night. They're like, oh, Mitch, how was the surf last night? Anything happened? And I'm like, let me tell you. Hey, mate, he got slated. Mitch had to rescue me, did he?
Oh, you
anyway,
bastard.
Huge tangent as to what the fuck we were even talking about. But
I was just thinking how your hair's sticking outside of your hat, and you look a bit like Frank Gallagher from Shameless now.
There's a reason I'm wearing a hat. I mean, look at this.
Oh, look! If you're on YouTube, you've just got a right treat there. Look at it. I mean, his locks. The boy's head's like an orange on a toothpick.
Look at that, man. I'm like an
I tell you what you look like. You look like Sideshow Bob.
Like one of them midget gem things.
But yeah, anyway, we've gone on a massive tangent of just giggles and fucking nonsense.
Yeah, I
on
don't know
this
how,
one,
because I'm rough. I just want to go to bed, so...
Yeah,
Let's-
I know.
let's
We
wrap
should
this
say that if you want any discounts for the show, we've got our show sponsors from all the Devon editions, and that is Tiki. And if you want 10% off Tiki on anything apart from boards, use the discount code UK Surf Pod, all capitals. That will get you 10% off at Tiki. We've also got Surface. I'm going to say that because Mitch has just sat there looking at me. So Surface, use the discount code UK Surf Show 24. And that will get you 10% off Surface wetsuits, Cookville clothing, UK Surf Show 10, and that will get you 10% off at Cookville clothing. Yeah, I think that's it. Go and listen to the Grumpy Surfer podcast. Different stories about military stories, grappling. I always call it grappling. It's Jujitsu, isn't it? Jujitsu stories and surf
Jiu-jitsu.
stories.
Hence
He's actually had
BJJ.
some really good guests on there as well.
There's some great guests
real,
on there.
Yeah.
He really
Yeah.
has.
He hasn't had the greatest guests from the UK Surf Show on there yet, but I'm sure that'll come at some point, won't it?
Yeah, he'll ask me soon.
Yeah, that's you. Yeah, that's all right. And yeah, that's it. So we'll see you next time with someone else.
I'm going to go have a lem sip. Bye.